Okay, guys, do I have audio now? Do I have audio now? Is it coming through? Okay, guys, so my everything says that I'm getting audio now. Bingo. Okay, good stuff. So we have audio. Have no idea what happened. Hey there, us truth. Hey Erkan, welcome. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you Erkan again for your support as always, for your help. Karen, hello there. Good to see you. Hello Veronica. High School Super, and we've got Stephen Gilchrist. Thank you very much for popping in. Good to see you again as always. Of course, we have Dragona. We have DHC. We've got End Time. So hey guys, welcome. Um, Okay, yeah, we have audio. Hi, Josie Wales, the Outlaw. Fantastic, man. Awesome stuff. How you doing? Yeah, so guys, great. We have audio. So let me, right. Any questions that I missed in the chat that I should be aware of? Was there anything that anyone wanted to ask before I kick this off? Right, let's see if I missed anything. So audio. Um, Y- Yeah, yeah, the Cloran. The Cloran is actually what the KKK called their book, which apparently is based on the Quran somehow. So yeah, very, very strange. Okay, so no questions. Okay, so I should kick this off. I should move to right. So guys, so I'm just sharing the main screen. So right, so to pick up where we left off. So today I'm going to talk. I'm going to finish up the notes on Lost Truth, man. Will you marry me? You know, with questions like that, dude, it's yeah, yeah. Why am I so handsome? Look, it's just good genes, good luck. I've been blessed, and I don't question it. And for the haters out there, don't hate me because I'm beautiful, okay? Um, so yeah. Yes, Stephen Gilchrist. Yes, the KKK do have a book. It's called the Cloran, like the Quran, but with an L. So the Cloran, that's their book. That's something to think about. Yes, multiple spouses are okay. Yeah, maybe not. So, hey, we just double check this screen. I've got to enable this. Okay, move this to the right. Okay, guys. So today I want to cover a handful of things. I want to just finish up the notes on the Crusades, right? So this part four and probably the final on this one. I'm also going to talk about a little bit about the Dhimmi. Yes, he did a spoof video. What's interesting, DHC, is that right after I was on a show with I can't remember his surname for some reason. Is with Jan. Oh, good grief. From Logos Media. I did a show on Jan's channel on Logos Media, and we discussed the Quran. And about a week later, David Wood said that he'd been informed about this. He'd heard about the KKK's book being called the Quran and did a show. So this was like just after we put that information out. So might be related. You never know. Pedro Pablo Garcia Lopez says, "I envy you though. I'm not so handsome." Hey man, look, you know, it's just luck sometimes, it's the luck of the draw. So thanks, Josie. Right. So yeah, I will also cover a little bit of the dhimmi. I want to go through a few pages because that's relevant as well. And I also want to, I thought of doing it as part of this show, but I think I will do a separate show to discuss Islam, where Islam claims that they are the best of people ever evolved. And of course, that non Muslims, the unbelievers, are the evil of the wilderness. The unbelievers are evil. The unbelievers are the worst of beasts. Now, that particular translation can no longer be found because places like Sunnah.com alter the Arabic text as far as I can tell. And I would also think that Google Translate actually, either Sunnah.com is altering their Arabic text to report something different when you run a translation, or Google is doing it, or both. Because I'm definitely finding that translations that I used to use in the past are changed, or you can't find certain hadith. Or if you can find them, if you have the direct link, but that you can no longer search for them on various sites. So this is starting to happen. So be aware of that. If you need any books, I if you need any books, I have copies of the original hadiths and so on, PDFs from ages ago, which is a little harder for them. Hi, Dragona. Thank you very much. Edkin says, Sunnah.com API filters some results. Some results you can see on the website cannot be retrieved through the API. Yeah. I would think there's something a little fishy going on. Yeshua is Yahweh. Hello there. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Right. So I wanted to talk about why Islam considers itself the the best of people to ever evolve, the best of people created for the whole world, and why everyone else is the worst of beasts, everyone else is the lowest of creatures, because the implication in the Arabic is actually that we are like four-footed beasts, not real people. But anyway, I want to discuss some of the implications of that. Right. So let's we'll get into that on Friday. One thing I do want to discuss today though is the very typical, especially from an atheist viewpoint, the idea that Christianity, the idea that religion is responsible for the majority of deaths in the world and the majority of wars in the world. That's something I want to shoot down and kill today. Right? Very definitely kill that argument dead. Right. So, and I mean that metaphorically because it's an argument. So it's an argument that, so I'll be providing facts to destroy that. Dobry wieczór, Marek. Yeah. So, right. Let's get on to this then. So, part one, I will recap what I have here. So, as historian Hilaire Belloc observed during the peak of Western might and Islamic weakness, millions of modern people of the Western civilization of Europe and America have forgotten about Islam. Many have never come in contact with it. They take for granted that it is decaying and that it is just a foreign religion which will not concern them. It is the most formidable and persistent enemy which our civilization has had, and may at any moment become as large a menace in the future as it has been in the past. It is a huge menace today. It is it is something that is definitely a threat, and the threat doctrine is the Sharia. Stephen Gilchrist says, I read up on the whole Baphomet and Muhammad connection, all that. Yeah, yeah, that's something I want to invite. It's Jan Irvin. I do actually want to invite him on. I did about 2 dozen shows with him. And yeah, what's crazy is that YouTube actually first demonetized his channel. They banned him for reasons I couldn't find justifiable. And then, of course, they deleted his primary account. This is what YouTube does. I believe his secondary, his backup channel is still up. You can find a lot of the content there, but yes. But yeah, the Baphomet Muhammad connection, that's something definitely worth discussing in the future. Thanks for mentioning that, Stephen. So, now something worse than forgetting is that the West has rewritten history to fit postmodern paradigms, and this is unfortunately a serious problem. So, whether taught in high school or portrayed by Hollywood or the news media, the predominant historic narrative is, let me just take that comment for you, Stephen. There you go. Is that the Muslims were the historic victims of intolerant Western Christians. And this is absolutely not the case. We have demonstrated that there was something like hundreds, 500 plus attacks on Christendom over more than 462 years before the First Crusade was called as a cry for help against these encroaching Islamic attacks, which had swallowed up at that point about 70% of Christian lands, destroyed something like 10,000 churches all across North Africa, as well as 1,000 churches on the border between Turkey and Armenia. So these are the tears of jihad. This is what we don't talk about. Hi, Dodzod, welcome. So now, even otherwise objective history books contribute to this distorted thinking. They talk of Arab, Moorish, Ottoman, and Tatar, rarely Islamic invasions. Now, this is something that is most definitely true, and I do want to, at some point, I've bought some books. I have, for instance, one on the golden age of Andalusia, that's the Islamic occupation of Spain. That's something that once I read and take notes, I will present shows on that and discuss this. Now, all of these books, all of these histories do not mention that the doctrine of jihad impelled those Muslims to assault the West. Now, no matter what facts we present to the other side, of course, they will just deny this. But Muslims are still today exhibiting the very same imperial impulse. And don't forget, Islam is Arab imperialism. Erkin says there are only 5 new churches constructed since Selim the Grim era in Turkey. That's, yeah, 5 churches. They've destroyed most of it. And look at that, what's happened to the Hagia Sophia. I believe that's now officially a mosque. Josie Whale says Sir Winston Churchill called the followers of the Islamic ideology Mohammedans. And that is true. They do worship Muhammad. They most certainly. When you read the Sirah, they deify Muhammad. Um, Stephen, you mentioned that you were reading The Sealed Nectar. And of course, you should also try the As Shifa by Qadi Iyad. That's the other book that I couldn't remember the other day. So when you read the Sirah, you realize that Muhammad is Jesus in Islam. He is the counterfeit Jesus. He is the first creation of Allah. He's the reason that the heavens and the earth were created. Allah created heaven and earth for Muhammad, right? And Muhammad is the very first being of creation. And also Muhammad's spirit entered all of the prophets, including Jesus, and animated them. And that's why we are all born Muslims, because we have a part of Muhammad inside us, part of Muhammad's light, which is inside us. And of course, Muhammad's a Muslim. You figure that out. So Churchill called the followers of the Islamic ideology Mohammedans, and this describes them better than Muslims because they follow the teachings of Muhammad. Why do they hate this name? Well, because they obviously want to, I mean, they will throw their own theology under the bus the moment you mention anything that embarrasses them. So by the same token, they have to deny it because it's shirk. Just switch my monitor back on before it switches off. There we go. Veronica says, Bill Warner has a video which shows all the attacks in Christendom by Islam in fast motion. Yes, I played that in the very first video. I have a 3 or 4 minute version on my website, and in this first video I did play it. And Marek says he likes Mr. Muslim's hairstyle. Yeah, that's a fantastic series. Right. Faithful Christian, yeah, unfortunately I would tend to agree with you there. With Sira, do you mean reliance of the traveler? That's from Dragona. No, the Sira, originally the Sira referred to the Sira technically are the political and military actions of Muhammad, right? Um, so hold on, I just want to see what was said there. So what we have is the Sira originally referred to the wars of Muhammad. It comes from the word Siyar, right? So these are the wars of Muhammad. Now, over time, this has kind of colloquially become the Gospels of Muhammad. They call them the biographies, but technically they are the Gospels of Muhammad. So, however, originally, this is where this, from the Sunnah, from the example of Muhammad, this is where Muslims get the specifics of his actions in the early days. So his wars, his political conquests, his military actions, and this is, of course, the inspiration for the continuation of the jihad, because this was the example of Muhammad. Hope that answers your question. Right, so before I get too stuck into answering too many questions. Oh, guys, by the way, I think YouTube has monetized my channel. Super chats should work. So yeah, I don't know if they do, but you guys can look from your side, and I believe super chats do work. Now, now you should realize if you have read the madrasa manuals, and I've read a few of them, right, and they all come from an original template. Actually, all the madrasa manuals effectively draw from a single original template. And I've read it, and I actually have a copy of it. I should do a show on it one time. But in classrooms all across the Islamic world, Muslim children are taught to glorify jihadi conquests and despise those who do not worship Allah. This is quite explicit and also implicit within the lessons that Muslims learn when they are young at their madrasas. And also, Muslims are still exhibiting the same imperial impulse and the intolerant supremacism of their forebears. So something like in the modern era, it reported 215 million Christians are experiencing high levels of persecution, mostly in the Islamic world. Others are experiencing a genocide in the name of jihad. Places like the Philippines, places like Mozambique, oddly enough, are having some serious problems, right? Serious, massive beheadings, 50 beheadings of a village. End Time says the Sirat should rather be called the Disangalion of Muhammad. Yeah, well, yeah, it's just look, this stuff is just crazy. And now the progressive West, right, which is of course the anti-Western communist derived ideology, despises European and Christian history, right? So 20 years ago, Christopher Columbus was a hero. Now he's a villain. Now his statues are being torn down. Mehmet the Conqueror was a pedophile whose atrocities against Eastern Europe make the Islamic State appear tame. He's praised in secular Turkey on the anniversary of his very savage sack of Constantinople, right? And actually, there's a story regarding him and the man who became the prototype for Dracula, right? But that's a story for a different day. So it is said that those who ignore history are destined to repeat it. Now, unfortunately, we don't repeat the history, we forget the history. We allow our ancient enemies to rise again. We can talk about this issue, we can make it a public issue. Of course, you've got the media and you've got social media working against you, right? Because we are, as a culture, have started to attack our own culture, right? And a house divided cannot stand, right? So now the history recounted. Now, if you look at this is the book Sword and Scimitar that I've discussed previously, right? Um, Sword waving Muslims are not forcing their way into Europe today. Western European nations are opening their doors to and they are submitting to Islamic aggression. Germany and United Kingdom, as you know, crime and rape have soared in direct proportion to the number of Muslim refugees accepted. Of course, these things are not popular facts. Sweden alone, where rape has increased by 1,472% since their country embraced multiculturalism, is on the verge of a social collapse. So the information age is, well, we've got the information. This is the age. And of course, as Jack Nicholson famously said, can you handle the truth? So to end off on this chapter, at least, what about the Crusades? And the question is, what about them? They were a legitimate, necessary, emergency, late response to 462 years of naked, open aggression. What were Muslims doing on French soil in 732 AD? They crossed all the way from Arabia, all the way across North Africa, all the way across Africa, up over through the sea into Spain. What were they doing in Spain? And then from Spain into France. How'd they get there? What were they doing there in 732? Right? Clearly, they were not there for sightseeing to buy Louis Vuitton bags. And of course, Muslims are going to go, well, we did not invade Spain. We did not invade France because France did not exist at the time. There was no such thing as France. Well, you know what I mean. The territory that today we call France. What were you doing there? Right? You started this fight. You were first. No. So in both Western academia and as well as in the Islamic world, the Crusades are viewed as wars of aggression fought by bloody-minded Christians against peaceful Muslims. There is nothing peaceful in Islamic ideology. And I think we've covered this at length. So while the Crusades were bloody, they're more accurately understood as a belated Western response to centuries, 462 years of non-stop jihad. So Muslim rule in the Holy Land began in the second half of the 7th century during the Arab wave of jihad with the conquest of Damascus and Jerusalem by the second rightly guided caliph, Umar. There was an initial bloody jihad, right? Over 400 years too late. Yes, Dragona, that is the case. Adam Seeker says 600 years late and far too small to, yeah. Yes, precisely, but they did keep them out of Europe for 200 years, which gave Europe time to get stronger and deal with the incursions. Now, Christian and Jewish life was tolerated within the strictures of the dhimma, right? The Arab Muslims generally permitted Christians abroad to continue to make pilgrimage to their holy sites, a practice which proved lucrative for the Muslim state. So they were making money, of course, because a dhimma contract is essentially servitude, but it's also a matter of extortion, right? So a couple of comments. Christ says, don't find my kingdom is not of this world. And then an Arab comes and wants to conquer the world. Yes, if you read the books by Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim, which are polemics against Christianity, you'll find that, for instance, in Ibn Taymiyyah's book, and they're as insulting as you can imagine, they're incredibly insulting books about Christianity, about Jesus. They would say, for instance, Muhammad is the camel rider, Jesus rode a donkey, and the camel rider is superior. So they're very, very... Niks, hello Lloyd de Jong, groeten van Monte Vista. Hallo Niks, het is goed om jou te zien. Baie dankie. Dat jy hier is, ja nee, goed om mense van die huis te sien. So in the 11th century, the relatively benign Arab administration, now the Islamic administrations did, once they had control, they generally had to maintain some form of peace to earn their money, right? They couldn't kill all their slaves. They would have no income because the whole point of this enterprise is to earn money off the extortion. People are dead. Well, they can't work, they can't earn money, and you go broke, which is what happened. But so administrations did occasionally not follow the law, and then sometimes they would follow the law, and then of course that would be, and also once you've killed 50,000, 100,000, a million people, people tend to get the message, just comply and don't get killed. So therefore, they didn't have to continue the example of murdering people to maintain discipline under their rule, right? Now, the Arab administration of the Holy Land was replaced with the Seljuk Turks, right? And there was civil war within the Islamic Empire, and in the latter half of the 11th century, the Turks waged war against the Christian Byzantine Empire and pushed it back from its strongholds in Antioch and Anatolia, now known as Turkey. in 1071, the Byzantine forces suffered a major defeat at the Battle of Manzikert in what is now eastern Turkey. So the Turks resumed the jihad in the Holy Land. They abused, they robbed, they enslaved, raped, and killed Christians there and throughout Asia Minor. They threatened to cut off Christendom from its holiest site, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, rebuilt under Byzantine stewardship after it was destroyed by Caliph al-Hakim bi-Amr Allah in 1009. So it was in this context that a renewed jihad in the Middle East that the Roman Pope Urban II issued a call in 1095 for Western Christians to come to the aid of their Eastern cousins. Now, unfortunately, the split that happened in the church was problematic. It weakened the church, right? The schism that happened, this was not a good thing. And of course, things got even worse under Martin Luther. And if you guys do a research, well, if you research the history of Martin Luther, you'll find he was not a nice man. So this armed pilgrimage, right? It was effectively an armed pilgrimage. Not all of the people who participated were professional soldiers, in which numerous civilians as well as soldiers took part, would eventually become known years later as the First Crusade. This is a name that appeared much, much later. So the idea of a crusade, as we now understand on that term, the Christian holy war, developed years later with the rise of such organizations as the Knights Templar that made crusading a way of life. Now, there's some stories. Yeah, the Muslims are unfortunately still fighting the Crusades. Unfortunately, this is true. If you read the works of Ahmad Didat, he says that we are busy on our crusade. The thing is, the Crusades ended 800 years ago. The Jihad has never ended and can never end until the entire world is subjugated. Right? So, have I missed anything? Erkan says, okay, so some names: Malazgirt, Erzurum in modern Turkey. Okay, so have I missed anything? The Crusades were a defensive action and certainly wasn't an aggressive action. That is why there were so many of them. Kick them out, back they'd come. Yes, there weren't that many Crusades though, yeah, but that's correct, Josie. So the most ardent Crusaders were the Franks. Those are the ones who had faced the jihad and the razzias, the raids, for centuries along the Franco-Spanish border, and they knew better than most the horrors to which Muslims subjected Christians. So we slowly end off this section. Now, at the time of the First Crusade, the populations of Asia Minor, Syria, and Palestine, though ruled by Muslims, were still overwhelmingly Christian. The crusading campaigns of the Western Christian armies were justified at the time as a war liberating Eastern Christians, whose population, lands, and culture had been destroyed by centuries of dhimitude and jihad. Right. So, conquering territory in Allah in the mode of jihad is an alien idea to Christianity because we do not legislate rules of that type. Right? We have a separation between church and state. Islam, the state protects the church. So that's an idea that comes from Al-Ghazali, right? There's no separation between mosque and state. There is no separation between mosque and state. The mosque, the state, is protecting the mosque. The state protects the religion. That's the idea that comes from Al-Ghazali. And this is not part of the tradition of Islam. The jihad will not end until the entire world has submitted. That is why they say Islam means peace, because peace only comes after the full submission of the world. Yes, that is true, daughter of Al-Masi. So, now, Islamic apologists love to make the assertion. Of course, they have to lie to do so. But now, my question for Islamic apologists, which of course they will ignore because they know they'll not be able to answer, show me the jihad legal texts from the New Testament that are equivalent to the writings in the Sharia. I've covered those in some detail on multiple different shows, including this one, right? Now, you can use the Hedaya, Volume 2, Book 9, Chapter 2, of the manner of waging war, of plunder, and the division thereof, of the conquests of infidels, and its discussion of servitude and slavery under Islam as your example, right? Now, you must understand the Hedaya is incredibly important within Islam. And it says here, this is a review on Kitabun. The importance of this book cannot be exaggerated. It was, and still is, referred to in all courts in Muslim India. It's also the primary legal manual in Pakistan. It's also what imams learn when they finish their course on becoming an imam. It's the final Sharia manual they study because it's the most detailed. It's also studied in most Hanafi-based Darul Ulums and Islamic universities. Now, the most authoritative book on Hanafi law is the Hedaya, right? And we'll leave I won't go into every sentence here, but they do claim that on Kitabun, education in Islamic law is not complete without this book. Each and every madrasa, whatever its affiliation, imparts instruction in Islamic law through Al-Hidayah. Most researchers and scholars first consult Al-Hidayah before they move to another source because it's the final source they learn from, the most complete, 2,650 plus pages. In the area of Muslim personal law, it has been the major source relied upon by courts in Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India. So this is a critically important book. That's just a sample of what people say about it. How many volumes in the Hedaya? 4 volumes. And there are 4 volumes. I can give you links to all of them. Volume 2 is the one that you want. It should be linked in the description. Have a look. Right. And Ed can just provided the link. That's my actual personal adobe.com copy, which is all my annotations. Now, about the Sir or the institutes. Now, if someone asked me about Sira, right? Sir is the plural of Sirat, which in its primitive sense signifies regulation in matters spiritual and temporal. Sayyid in the language of the law especially applies to the institutes of the Prophet Muhammad in his wars. That's what the Sira are about. The institutes of Muhammad, the traditions of Muhammad in his wars, but the institutes means government institutions, law. So what you have is on the manager, sorry, on the manager, on the manner of waging war, of plunder, the division thereof, of the conquests of infidels. Now it says here, war must be carried on against the infidels at all times by some party of the Muslims. So war is permanently established. The sacred injunction concerning war is sufficiently observed when it is carried on by any one party or tribe of Muslims. It is then no longer of any force with respect to the rest. This is called Fard al-Kifaya. It's a communal obligation. As long as some do it, the rest are allowed not to do it. Otherwise, the sin, in fact, the crime of non-participation falls upon all of them, and they all suffer, potentially can go to hell. Right. Now, it is established as a divine ordinance by the word of Allah, who said, slay the infidels, and also by a saying of the Prophet, war is permanently established until the day of judgment. Of course, we know it's not the day of judgment. Islam, yes, Erkan, correct. Islam is a religion of war. Coco Jasmine, yeah, the Hedaya is about 100 megabytes. No, it's about 30 megabytes. You should be able to. So try a different link. I've also go to archive.org for volume 2. That may help you. Archive.org is a site where you can find most of this stuff. Now they say war is permanently established until the day of judgment, meaning the ordinance, that's the law respecting war, right? And it says here, war is enjoined, commanded, war is required for the purpose of advancing the true faith being Islam. So Islam is spread by war. This is the word in the Hedaya. And they mean here, meaning jihad fard, or ordained war, war to be waged against infidels. It is termed the holy war. Now, if, however, no Muslims were to make war, the whole of the Muslims would incur the criminality of neglecting it. If no Muslims went and made war, all Muslims would suffer under the criminal action of not doing so, and Allah would punish them. Okay, so hold on. What's it about Sira International? They don't read the sources. Dragana, yes, that is true. They don't even read the Quran. They just listen to the so-called scholars. And Syed F11, Syed, of course, has written a comment that was held for review, and I'm not going to reveal, but he's saying the same stupid things he always says. And Syed, how about you make a comment on your own actual sources? This is the most important, probably the most important Islamic Sharia manual in the world, right? So how about you speak about what this says and why it says this? Please speak on this subject. Otherwise, I will not allow you to say anything. I'm not interested in listening to your nonsense. Now, so following the very bloody capture of Jerusalem in 1099 by Latin armies and the establishment of crusader states in various places, blah, 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 Muslim and Christian sources fought back and forth, right? In which both parties were eventually guilty of the crimes that happen within war. War's a dirty thing, right? Now, of course, you might fight it in good cause. However, once you engage in violence, violence tends to escalate out of your control. Now, over time, even with reinforcing crusades waged from Europe, the crusader states were strung out too far. They couldn't hold the line, right? They were strung out on precarious lines of communication, and eventually they succumbed to superior Islamic power. In 1271, the last Christian citadel, Antioch, fell to the Muslims. Now, no longer having to divert forces to subdue the Christians on the Eastern Med, the Muslims regrouped for a 400-year-long jihad against Southern and Eastern Europe, which twice reached to Vienna before it was halted. Right, twice as far as Vienna. What were they doing in Vienna? So in geostrategic terms, the Crusades can be viewed as an attempt by the West to forestall its own destruction at the hands of Islamic Jihad by carrying the fight to Syed, you are an annoyance. You are a stupid man, a stupid, stupid man, right? This is a fact. These are your own sources. This is written by the four infallible imams, right? You are clearly embarrassed and humiliated by this, and you cannot deal with this. There's nothing new that you were saying, and everything you said has been discussed at length, honestly and diligently by Christian apologists, by myself, by many others, and yet, of course, you are not interested in discussion, interested in learning. You're simply interested in your foolish, uneducated, incredibly stupid polemic. I have no interest in it. I have absolutely no interest. I've been patient with you, but enough. No more. Now, so significantly, the West, now, of course, we halted the Crusades for about 200 years. Europe managed to get a little bit stronger, right? And it was then able to fight back. However, the West has, for some time now, called the Crusades a mistake. However, there is no mention of Islamic regret for the centuries and centuries of jihad and dhimmitude perpetrated against other societies. So this is not a surprise to us, right? Because religious violence contradicts the fundamentals of Christianity. Religious violence is written into Islam's DNA, as we've seen for over 1,000 years now. Okay, interrupted by crusader rebuttal about which the modern West is obsessed, Islam posed an existential threat to Western civilization. It is required to destroy you. It is required to conquer you. It is required to make you Muslim or kill you. Its doctrine has not changed, only their methods. The ulama are very, very patient. And they do have a saying in that part of the world. They say that while we have the watches, they have the time. Right. So I'll pause this here before I move on to the next section, but that wraps up this part of my discussion. So yeah, I hope that was helpful and useful to you guys. Um, right. Any questions that I've missed, Stephen Gilchrist? Yeah, I guess it does. I mean, look, I have no interest in idiots. I'm sorry, but this man is a fool. Um, so Daughter Valmasi says, I believe that the jihadists failed because no matter what the West was doing, it was also being used to preserve the word of God, so it could never fail. Well, look, they've swallowed up a lot of land, right? And unfortunately, dialogue and fruitful discussion is not going to help. Let's just say that. You're going to have to do a little bit more than that. Yeah, what remains to be seen, and here I'm not discussing violence, but this all does need to be exposed. Right. God se seëninge, baie dankie, niks. Nag, ja. Nee, slaap goed as jy gaan as jy gaan slaap. Ja, dankie dat jy hier was. Um, okay, so now I want to move on to a couple of things. So I want to bring up a couple of things. So this is from the okay. So now this is from the Reliance of the Traveler, and I'm going to bring this up in a moment. And right, so this is from the Reliance of the Traveler. So we've got so this is the non-Muslim subject of the Islamic State. Now, don't forget, many of these sources whitewash this information. What you find is very faithful Christian says, "Are you an ex-Muslim?" No. If that is directed to me, no, I'm not. I lived in the Middle East for just under 11 years. I was there for 10 years and 7 months of my life. I worked in the Middle East with the military, with governments, um, and I've spent time in almost every single Islamic country. Been there multiple times. Been to Qatar at least 20 times. Been to you name it, been to northern Iraq, Kurdistan, you name it, all over the place. So, non-Islamic subjects of the Islamic State. So, a formal agreement of protection is made with citizens who are Jews and Christians. Now, they call it protection. That's very nice, but it's like the mafia who give you protection. This is a nice store. It'd be a shame if someone smashed everything in it. You've got a lovely wife. It'd be a shame if someone cut her face with a knife. You've got a nice story. It'd be a shame if someone burned it down. How about we protect you? You pay us some protection money. And that's exactly what this is. And it says here, such an agreement is only valid when the subject peoples follow the rules of Islam and they pay money to them. That's extortion, right? We know that as the crime of extortion. And here they say the minimum non-Muslim poll tax is 1 dinar of gold, 4.235 at the time, grams of gold per person per year. The maximum is what both sides agree upon. So in other words, there's no maximum, right? So typically, and they say here, and this is a lie, this is a flat outside. This is contradicted by the Hedaya, chapter 8, okay, page 217. It is collected with leniency and politeness. This is an absolute flagrant lie. The author here has just lied through his teeth. That's the man who translated this book. It's a complete and total lie for him to say that. Okay, now, just so by the way, we did this discussion a couple of days ago with Shamun Khakan talking about Islamic marriage and divorce of prepubescent girls and infants. And of course, they speak here of women that are stoned to death. And it says here, a person is not considered to have the capacity to remain chaste, to remain a virgin, if he or she is prepubescent at the time of marital intercourse. Now, I presented something like 20 of these quotes that discuss legal sex with underage girls in Islam with prepubescent or infant children. Okay. And of course, Muslims are making comments, especially on Shamun's channel, where they say that there's no such thing in Islam. And they're simply flat out denying the evidence of their own Sharia. It's really sad. I mean, they have to lie about it. It's too embarrassing for them. But they will flat out deny the truth of their own scriptures. Now, yes, that is true, Veronica. I have a show called Dhimmis and Jizya. I have one. Check on my channel. And yes, the children of people who couldn't pay the jizya were taken as slaves. Yes, there was, in fact, the wife and child were taken as slaves, were sold. If you couldn't pay the jizya, the wife and child. Now, as daughter Valmasi says, this is actually a very pertinent point. Like, how can paying money satisfy God and cause him to let you remain alive? Can God be made silent by bribes? Well, you are there to make them wealthy. Like, wow, Karan, thank you very much. I'm very grateful. Thank you very, very much. It really goes a long way, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Um, which Shamun? No, I don't mean Sam Shamun. I don't know Sam Shamun. Can I mean Shamun Kakan? I did a show with him a week ago discussing Islamic marriage, divorce, and legal sex with children. Okay. Okay, so moving on, I want to cover, so let me do this. So let me bring this up. Now, captives of war in Islam may be killed. So I'm going to cover this just for a few minutes. Let me do this. Let me do this because I need to be able to see what the heck I'm doing. And I'm going to, nope, wrong one. Let me just find my windows again. I got myself mixed up here. Okay, now I'm just going to capture the whole screen. There we go. This is in the reliance of the traveler, right? Uh, so Dayan or Dejan says, yeah, in Balkan Europe, they have tax in blood. They took small kids and brainwashed them in soldiers' janissaries. Yes, if you go through my old video, I actually discuss in specific where the ruling is found in the book. So I mentioned the book, but where they actually show that you may take the children, but I go in great detail. Yes, the crosstalk. Thank you, DHC. Right. Now, when an adult male is taken captive, the caliph considers the interests of Islam and the Muslims and decides between the prisoner's death, slavery, release without paying anything, or ransoming him in exchange for money or for a Muslim captive held by the enemy. If the prisoner becomes a Muslim, wow, Marek, uh, man, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Jacob Mbatso, it's really kind. So before the caliph chooses any of the four alternatives, then he may not be killed. And any one of the other three alternatives is chosen. So therefore, they compel people to convert, to become Muslims, because it's their job to compel you to become Muslim by the sword if they have to. So either by persuasion or by force. And this is their doctrine, literally written like that. It is permissible in jihad to cut down the enemy's trees and destroy their dwellings. They'll tell you no, it's not, but just so you know, it is actually written there. Now, understand that killing prisoners of war, enslaving them, are actually crimes against humanity. So Islam legalizes war crime, right? Quran 65:4. Yes, if you go through the show that I had the live stream with Shamun Kakan, that is actually explained within that's the waiting period. That's actually explained within the Sharia, and the Sharia goes into excruciatingly painful detail on this subject, whereas the Quran is very brief. So the problem is, Adam Seeker, that they will argue back and forth with the Quran and with the Hadith. Whereas if you go into the Sharia, those are the rulings, the laws of all four schools. That is the rulings from the finest scholars of Islam who created Islamic law, the Sharia they all want to live under. And there is no ambiguity. They all agree prepubescent and infant, and I mean infant sex is legal. Okay, unambiguously, I've covered that. So Adam Leuchter says 30 minutes ago the broadcast was neither through Google nor on your page available as a live stream. Thought it was postponed. Yeah, I know YouTube's been doing strange things. In Islam, there's no such thing as illegal order. That's scary. Yeah, no, thank you guys. I appreciate the support. Um, these two verses now, see, Adam Seeker, unfortunately, the Quran is not a standalone book. The Quran is not the equivalent of the Bible. The Quran does not. The Quran is a bare bones outline. The Quran is a rough draft. It's a skeleton. The ultimate summation of Islam, the ultimate expression of Islam, the ultimate creation of Islam is the Sharia. The Quran, show me where in the Quran the instructions for how to perform the prayers, the way Muslims do the prayers in the mosque, show me where it is in the Quran. You can't find it. It's not there. It's in the Sharia. Show me where it expresses how Muslims have to do a marriage ceremony. It's not in the Quran. It's in the Sharia. Show me how you do the Hajj exactly, explicitly, all the rules, all the details. What about issues for how to manage war? Explicitly, all the details, how they have to manage. It's in the Sharia. It's not in the Quran. None of this stuff's in the Quran. So the Quran gives you a rough idea, and they can contradict it, and they can talk. No, the Sharia is where the rubber meets the road with Islam. It is explicit. It is definitive. It's black and white. There is no confusion, right? So really, I must admit, I have little interest in what the Quran says because also the Quran's abrogated. 95% of the Quran is abrogated. What remains, what is left, what is unabrogated of both the Quran and the Hadith, because the Hadith are also abrogated, is in the Sharia. The Sharia will highlight the relevant verse and then tell you what it means, or it will provide the legal framework. All the laws might be 50 pages of laws and say, based on this one verse. Now, that one verse could be 12 words. So on 12 words, you now have 50 pages of law. Understand? Which one is more detailed? The Sharia, not the Quran, not the Hadith. Um, so now let's continue with this, right? So let me finish here. Now, so the Caliph has to see that Islam can spread freely in non-Muslim lands, including the use of force, right? And the Caliph has to organize jihad against any non-Muslim government which prevents Muslim dawah from entering its land. So the Caliph must organize jihad against non-Muslim governments which prevent. So in other words, if a country says, look, we don't like this Islam thing, we're going to ban it, well, they have to do jihad against you because you are preventing the spread of Islam, right? Now, Dayan says, Muslims, sometimes when I speak with Muslims, I'm not sure, did they try to lie or they really have no clue? Man, I don't know, that's a tough one. It's like 50-50. Dude, I here's the thing though, but they are by default lying anyway, because even when they are not trying to lie on it deliberately, they've been lied to and they're spreading a lie from their scholars, right? Now, jizya is a capitation tax, right? Definition of capitation, a direct tax imposed on each head or person. So this is a flat tax. It's not based on any particular, unless you're lucky enough that the master who controls you and controls your land allows you a benefit in some way, right? Reduces your taxation. But so that's capitation tax, known as a poll tax, right? It's a head tax. Of course, if you don't pay it, it's a decapitation tax. Now, let's have a look at the jizya, Quran 9:29. In Tafsir Ibn Abbas, fight against such of those who have been given the scripture, the Jews and the Christians, right? And forbid not in the Torah that which Allah. So if we do not forbid in the Torah, right? Forbid that which Allah has forbidden, and we do not follow the religion of truth and do not, pardon me, submit ourselves to Allah through confession to Allah's single unitary nature, right? We must pay the tribute readily, standing from hand to hand, being brought low, abased. In other words, humiliated. Let's have a look at what the Hedaya says. The Prophet has declared that capitation tax is not incumbent upon Muslims. They pay something else. They pay the zakat. But capitation tax is a species of punishment. Capitation tax is punishment inflicted upon infidels on account of the infidelity of not following Muhammad, right? Not following Islam's. Whence it is termed jizyat, which is derived from jizya, meaning retribution. So when they speak of protection, well, pay up or you die. We're protecting you from us. Understand? This is extortion. This is the mafia. Daughter of Almasi says, but lying is the number one thing. I knew it when I was 9 in madrasas, and they said if two people are fighting, support the Muslim if it's right or wrong. I was 9 and I knew it was not fair. That's incredible. Wow. Yes, actually, it's in the Sharia that the Muslim is the brother of the Muslim and he will come to his aid. That's actually part of, if you look at the chapter on slander, if you go through Reliance of the Traveler, you look at ghibba. I think it's section R2.9, yeah, which is the chapter on slander. They said that the Muslim is the brother of the Muslim and he will always come to his aid. Therefore, they will always do that. It's actually required within the Sharia to do so. So that is a law that they're responding to, right? Now, let's continue. Right? Now, abase means to behave in a way that belittles or degrades someone, to humiliate, to demean, to degrade, and disgrace. This is what's required. Now, let's have a look at dhimmis again further. It's a contract, okay? We're dealing with lawyers because don't forget, in the Sharia, you don't have priests, you have lawyers. These are administrators and lawyers, right? These are bureaucrats and lawyers. A dhimmi is a prisoner of war, really. A dhimmi is a prisoner of war. So the non-Muslim subject, right? We've mentioned this, right? Now, let's continue. It's valid when you follow the rules of Islam. If you don't, you may be killed. So it says it's collected with leniency and politeness, which is a complete lie. Now, non-Muslim subjects are obliged to comply with Islamic rules. Okay, they are to be distinguished from Muslims in dress. This is just a few of the rules, right? So you're not allowed to dress as well as the Muslims, or the same as. You must distinguish yourself. They're not greeted with peace be upon you. They are not greeted. They are not accorded the same level of respect, right? They must keep to the side of the street, often the worst side of the street. They may not get in the way of the Muslims when they're walking on the street. They may not build higher than or as high as the Muslims' buildings. So if their quiet tall house is not raised, right? And they are forbidden to openly display wine or pork or to ring church bells. Now, of course, the azan, they will build a mosque in your area and they will blast the call to prayer at 4 a.m. in the morning. But try to build a church in Saudi Arabia. See how far you get. Ring the church bells. See if that doesn't get you killed. Understand, this is not an equivalent, this is not equal reciprocation. This does not happen. And we are not allowed to recite the Torah or the Evangel aloud, that's the Gospels. And we are forbidden to build new churches. Yes, yeah. So, yes, correct, Adam, that is true. Now, to continue with this, if a non-Muslim subject of the Islamic State refuses to conform to the rules of Islam to pay the non-Muslim poll tax, then their agreement has been violated. And when a subject's agreement with the state has been violated, the caliph chooses between the four alternatives mentioned above: death, slavery, and so on. Those are your choices, because those choices are in connection with prisoners of war. A dhimmi is a war prisoner. This is what they don't tell you, because the law specifies a dhimmi is actually a war prisoner. MMSU 31, is this the Sharia or the Quran? This is the Sharia. I really have this much interest in the Quran, about this much. This much. The Quran's, look, the Quran's unimportant. Yes, I might say that with qualifications. Understand there is a relevance to it, there is a use to it. But in terms of understanding Islam, in terms of the scholars' need of Islam, they have no need for it. Very little. Okay, but look, I need to qualify that for another time. But really, the essence of Islam is the Sharia. The final product, the outcome of all of Islam is the Sharia. Now, we have to acknowledge the domination of Islam. We need to be dominated. You might recall I did the discussion of deen, right? What is a deen? And the first meaning of deen is to subjugate, to control, to dominate. It's a political system based on subjugation, humiliation, and degradation of your enemies. We are the enemies, right? We live in the Dar al-Harb, the house of war, right? So, reliance of the traveler, H8, it is not permissible to give zakat to a non-Muslim. Yes, that's just one of the minor things. So let's continue. Yeah, they mentioned, so let me skip through that. I need to only go up to, okay, I'm going to cancel this. Now I want to move on to something else. And okay, guys, so the final portion, it's now, let me catch up with any questions if I've missed anything. Muslims can't even give zakat to non-believers. That is true. Tax is a punishment. Yes, that is true. 1/8 of zakat is for jihad, Dejan. Yes, that is correct. Wow, Almasi, daughter of Almasi, I got beat a lot because I kept questioning. They're like, wow, wow, that's brave of you. Wow. I'm glad you got out of that. Yeah, now, okay, so now, okay, so let me go here. I want to go into, now this is something that I will do a separate episode on sometime, but I think this is worth covering. Okay, so I think this is very, very important. Now, I want to talk about as a final, just to end this chapter, unless I've missed something that because I tend to sometimes forget my notes and things, but this is the final section. I want to talk about the argument that Christians, especially, and religion in general, is responsible for massive amounts of atrocities and deaths in the world, the majority, in fact. In fact, if we have a look at, for instance, you know the Christian church, right? In fact, the Catholics invented the nuclear bomb and dropped it on Japan. As you know, the Catholic Church invented science, created pollution, and spread it all around the world and destroyed the air and destroyed the land, right? As you know, global warming is caused by the Catholic Church. Oh, no, sorry, hold on. These things are all created by science, the things that atheists worship so much. I think it's time we banned science because science seems to be destroying the world. As I recall, science created the nuclear bomb. Science created, jet fighters that deliver bombs. Science created drones that bomb children in the Middle East. I don't recall that those are Catholic bombs. Those are scientific bombs made by, well, you work it out. Understand? So, but sarcasm aside, a resource you might find useful is the BBC War Audit. So let's talk about this. It's all the Pope's fault, exactly, Mark. Yeah, the Pope invented the nuclear bomb. The Pope created pollution. The Pope created plastic waste. I mean, the Catholic Church did that, as you know, and then spread it around the world. That's crazy. Yeah, the Catholic Church invented the petroleum engine and decided to. Yep, yeah, yep. There you go. Atheists must. Yeah. So excuse my French, but man, sorry, Edkin, I'm not saying this to you. Okay, I get your point, and but understand that there are atheists that hate Christianity, and they go at us all the time, right? DHC, the Pope did not invent Islam. Yeah, I think you're just kidding with me, but no, that is absolutely not true. If it weren't for the Catholic Church, you would be praying with your ass in the air right now in Europe. That would be the case because, man, they were stopped by the Catholic Church. So now, Quran is part of Sharia. In fact, yeah, the daughter of Al-Masi says the Quran is part of the Sharia together with Siras and Hadith. In fact, yes, they're a subset of the Sharia. Yeah, exactly. They're an outline, a skeleton of that. And I need to thank someone who, for the life of me, I finished work like 5 minutes before and I, before I started this, and I can't remember the name of, but someone gave me some really good ways to express the idea of the Sharia, and it is a skeleton, it is an outline. And I can't remember entirely all the words that I was given, but yeah, I'm trying to understand, trying to find better ways to express these ideas. And daughter of Al-Masi says we follow our Lord Jesus so they can if they can, let them bring an accusation against him. Yeah, well, um, MMSU says no Pope, no Crusade, Arabic Islamic West, and no Bible. Exactly, they would have destroyed us, right? Um, DHCS says, no, I wasn't serious. Repeat, I wasn't serious. And there's been a public service announcement from Science. Thank you very much. Yeah, I know you weren't serious because, man, I'm not a Catholic, but man, I hate some of the stories people tell about the Catholic Church, which are just so false. And that's something for another day as well. But yeah. So now, I want to talk about the Encyclopedia of Wars. Now, do understand this is not an encyclopedia that is definitive. It doesn't cover every single war that has ever happened in history, but they do cover ones that are well documented historically, and they've covered a good sample of the wars, right? So, and by two fantastic authors. So, Charles Phillips and Alan Axelrod document the history of recorded warfare, and from their list of 1,763 wars, okay, and the numbers do vary a little bit. Only 123 have been classified to involve a religious cause, which accounts for less than 7% of all wars and less than 2% of all people killed in warfare. Right? Now, it is estimated that 1 million to 3 million people were tragically killed in the Crusades. Right? Don't forget, the Crusades did happen over decades. Right? It didn't happen in the blink of an eye. It happened over decades. Now, there are perhaps 3,000 deaths in the Inquisition. Some say now, with the latest figures, with the newest research, that figure may be as low as 800. People have claimed up to 50 million dead, right? Claim up to 50 million. There weren't that many people in Europe at the time, right? So the Crusades, in theory, have apparently killed more people than were in Europe at that time in history, right? Now, as low as 800 and maybe as high as 5,000 people were killed in the Inquisition. Now, of course, the Inquisition is another heavily misunderstood, heavily propagandized lie. Right? I'm not saying the Crusades didn't happen, but the propaganda about it is just dishonest. But that, again, is another story for another day. Yet, let's look at World War One. Nearly 35 million soldiers and civilians died in the secular, not Catholic, not Christian, secular 4-year slaughter of World War One. Let's have a look at a graph. Here's the Inquisition. I can't even see the figures. The Crusades, and this is World War One. That's just one secular war. Marek P. No, well, let's have a look here. Let's hope. Uh, True, was a Catholic priest. Yes, exactly. Who devised the Big Bang Theory. But um, man, look, lots of things have happened throughout time. I mean, you start reading the Protestants, guys. I don't want to get into a spat about Catholic. I'm not Catholic, just so you all know. I mean, I've said it before live in public. So I was raised Anglican, right? I've got multiple priests in the family. That's how that is. I live in a Catholic country. It's 98% Catholic. I go to a Catholic church because, well, that's the church I have to go to because that's what's this here, right? But that said, the stories that people tell about the Catholic Church are just largely bogus. Now, yes, I do have one or two problems with A, this current Pope, who A, seems to be a communist, and B, very pro-Muslim, and C, not exactly orthodox following Christian doctrine, as far as I can tell. I have a problem with that. Two, the 1963 Vatican II document, if you read its section on Islam, it's complete crap. Whoever wrote that had no idea what they were talking about, whatever. But the Vatican II, the section on Islam, it's horrendous. It's horrendously false. It's horrendously wrong. So yeah, I have a couple of problems, but I'm not going to go because look, I mean, if I look at if you want to go look at bad churches, go look at the Protestants in America. Try the Westboro Baptist Church and others. Try, yeah, you can find any number of faults everywhere, right? Humans are not perfect. But moving on. Okay. Guys, yeah, Georges Lemaitre, also cosmologist. Yep. Now, now, from the side of religiously motivated parties, don't forget. I mean, Turkey was involved, and that's a theocracy. Now, right, let's move on to here. Right now, this is the Encyclopedia of Wars. Okay, and here's the claim that religion. So Charles Phillips and Alan Axelrod, right, and there's multiple volumes as you can see. Now let's look at religion. The claim that religion causes war. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. Let's see, 1,763 wars by cause from 8,000 BC to 2000 AD. Now, let's have an interesting look. We have religious wars, 3.8%, 3.2%, and then government-related wars, 93%. So as you can see, these numbers here together are at least 5 times as large as this number, okay? According to the maths used by a lot of people who believe in science, right? Now, notice though that of these wars, the red section here, religious wars, are all religions that are not Islam, right? And the purple bit is Islam. Islam on its own has conducted and been part of and more wars than all other religions combined. Okay, so yeah, that's the truth. Now there are vast numbers of genocides, those that are killed in ethnic cleanses, purges that are not connected to a declared war. Right, so many of these wars are not declared. Josie Wells says, Lord, I'm Christian, a Catholic. I agree with you via this Pope. Christians should unify against the threats of the Muslims, not bicker amongst themselves. Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, look, I don't have a I don't have a knee-jerk reaction to the Pope. I mean, I supported Pope John Paul II. He was instrumental in working with the American government to destroy communism. And the stories I hear, I mean, the respect he's treated with here in Poland is amazing. I live in Poland. Obviously, I have a Polish family, duh. So, but I mean, I do have problems with many of the statements the Pope makes, and his statements on Islam are alarming. I have no idea who's feeding him information. I don't know for all I know, the Pope's a Muslim, dude. Seriously, but there are things he says that are alarming, and I am deeply concerned about it. And he's, you know, so now, guys, yes, Gospel Age, thank you very much. So, guys, please, if you would like the video, I see there's 18,000 million people in the chat watching the video. So if I can get 18,000 million likes, I would greatly appreciate it. That would be very kind. And share this information. Now, understand. Now, lots of wars are not officially declared. People are still killed. Okay, look at the killings like the Khmer Rouge or whatever. Not an officially declared war, but man, they killed millions of people, right? You look at what happened in Rwanda, the genocides. So it's estimated that over 160 million civilians were killed in genocides in the 20th century alone, with 100 million killed by the communist states of the USSR and China, right? Um, yes, Josie, I agree. Now, while some claim that communism itself is a state religion, Now, there's a point to that. There's a certain validity to that point because it has absolute dictator whose word is law and a holy book of unchallenged rules. The issue here is that such a claim simply equates religion with the human lust for power and control. And this unfortunately makes distinctions with other human institutions meaningless, right? Now, atheist leaders like Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, Lenin killed at least 110 million people, according to the BBC war audit mentioned above. And that was in the 20th century alone, more than all religious wars in the previous 19 centuries combined. So the wars of the 20th century, the atheist wars, the secular wars of the 20th century killed more people than all of the religious wars in the previous 1,900 years combined. Now, aggression, war, and violence do run contrary to the Bible's fundamental teachings of sacrificial love and forgiveness. Jesus didn't start any wars. The Bible, Muhammad did. Muhammad conducted at least 100 campaigns we know of, right? Killed people, tortured them for money. The Bible directly condemns murder, right? Many forms of violence and other forms of oppression, alternatively promotes love, patience, peace, forgiveness, and reconciliation. Love your neighbor as you love yourself, Mark 12:31. Unfortunately, Islam, of course, hate your neighbor if he's not a Muslim, right? Matthew, laying down one's love for others, and so on, which is turn the other cheek in Matthew and laying one's life down for others, are deeply rooted in Christian ethics. Now, this is modeled and demonstrated through Christ's love, see sacrificial love and forgiveness towards humanity in his death on the cross. Now, in the Old Testament, God did use Israel as an instrument of bringing justice, judging and destroying evil in certain situations. Now, of course, you always, Muslims and others will say, what about the Amalekites? Well, they haven't been around for 2,000 or more years, maybe 3,000 years. So yeah, there's no standing instruction to kill them. Unless the Amalekites suddenly became everybody else in the world, well, that argument is just illogical and stupid, right? And yeah. Also, in many cases, they'll say, well, God said go kill these people. Well, God said that because those people had been committing crimes for about 400 years. God had spoken to them, sent prophets that often killed those prophets, and God eventually says, look, the Jews, these guys are evil. Now, people want God to do something about evil, so when he does something, they complain. Because, I don't know, whatever. Yeah, make up your minds, guys. So anyway, so God obviously then sends people because these people have been violating the law. He's given them chance after chance after chance. So yeah, you can't win. With these folks, with their standards, you can't win. Okay? Now, mercy, forgiveness, and patience always preceded such actions. Now, Christianity identifies the human heart and its desire for power and pleasure as the alternative source of suffering and conflict, and it presents Christ as the solution. Now, for from within, out of the hearts of men, proceed the evil thoughts, fornications, thefts, murders, adulteries, deeds of coveting and wickedness, as well as deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. All these evil things proceed from within and defile the man. That's in Mark. So what is the source of quarrels and conflicts among you? Is it not the source your pleasures that wage war in your members? You lust and do not have, so you commit murder. You are envious and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. It's James 4, verses 1 to 2. Now, moving on, alternative to that, Christ is given as the answer. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. He did not command any wars. And remember, he said, my kingdom is not of this world. Right. So Christianity does not make secular claims. Now, let's move to the BBC war audit. Now, according to the BBC war audit, atheist totalitarian states, which are Stalin's Russia and Mao's China, have perpetrated more mass murder than any state dominated by religious faith. That's probably with the exception of Islam over time, but now we're looking at the modern era. Hitler's Germany was nominally supposedly a Christian state. However, it was not run by a Christian leader. Now, they'll say he was born a Christian. Well, so, right? People leave Christianity, they become scientists, right? Now, Germany was a totalitarian state, and it was responsible for the single most devastating genocide in history of a group identified by their religion, which was 6 million Jewish people. Now, one could dispute this and say that the Muslims murdered 80 million Hindus, because that's the real tears of jihad. That is the most heinous genocide in history. 80 million Hindus killed by the Mughals in India. Right, that was horrific. Do understand that the Germans not only killed 6 million Jews, and of course there's lots of people who want to tell you differently, but don't forget Poland lost roughly 1/5 to 1/4 of its population due to World War II, right? Something like 8 to 10 million Poles died. Now, of course, these apologists for evil refuse to tell you, refuse to, well, don't want you to know, and obviously usually themselves don't know that the plan was that Germany wanted Lebensraum, they wanted living room, living space, they wanted Poland, they were going to flatten every single Polish city and build 200 cities according to a plan devised by Hitler with a beautiful small town, and you were going to have lush farms surrounding these towns, and they were going to kill all the Polish adults. Let me repeat that. They were going to kill the Poles. They were going to wipe them out, murder the lot of them. They were going to take the children, however, and use them to become Germans, to become new good Germans. They were going to adopt them and indoctrinate them in the ways of the Third Reich. So, of course, now, if they were going to murder the lot of the Poles, it's very easy for them to go and murder the lot of the Jews, and they were going to do the same to the Czechs, and they were going to do the same to the Russians. So, yeah, they had plans for Eastern Europe, and none of it was good. Now we've got estimated death tolls from the 20th century hemoclism, which is the string of interconnected barbarities that have made the 20th century so miserable. Now, here's the count for the big five. Germany was very unlucky in the 20th century. World War I, 1923, Nazis, World War II, East Germany. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so that's from Edkin. No. So the count for the big five atrocities of the 20th century, the First and the Second World Wars, the Russian Revolution, Communist China, and the Soviet Union accounted for 75% of all deaths by atrocity in the 20th century. Right? That's from the BBC, and I'll make this all available to you. I think it's available online. There should be a link. This is in the online database. Now, all faiths combined, minus Islam, have caused less than 4% of all humanity's wars and violent conflicts. Further, they've played no motivating role in the major wars that have resulted in the most loss of life. So here we go. Islam taking its pride of place as the most violent religion to ever walk on the planet. Then, now let's have a look. Non-religious dictator lives lost. Joseph Stalin, a Catholic, probably was the Pope secretly. Mao Zedong. Oh, sorry, Joseph Stalin, Catholic. 42,672,000 people dead that we know of. Could be twice that number easily. Mao Zedong, 37,000. Mao Zedong, that name is obviously Catholic. Adolf Hitler, obviously a Catholic, 20,946,000. Chiang Kai-shek, no hiding it, that's clearly a Catholic name. 10,214,000 dead. Vladimir Lenin, Catholic, 4 million dead. Hideki Tojo, Japanese Catholic, 3,990,000. Pol Pot, what's that, Cambodian Catholic? As you can see, 2.4 million dead. Let's have a look. These are the deaths that these people have caused. Now, the historian Rummel says almost 170 million men, women, and children have been shot, beaten, tortured, knifed, burned, starved, frozen, and I was being sarcastic, right? Crushed or worked to death, buried alive, drowned, hung, bombed, or killed in any number of ways. The governments have inflicted death on unarmed, helpless civilians and foreigners. The dead could conceivably be nearly 360 million people, right? It is through our species that it is as though our species has been devastated by a modern black plague. And indeed it has, but it is a plague of power, not germs. And that's from Rummel. This is all linked, so check in the description. I have links to this database and all of these notes. I will update these again because I've just added some of these graphs today. So Stalin leads the list. He killed millions. So here we've got the list. This is taken, I think, from the BBC's research, right? And yeah, so this is horrific, right? So this is what we're looking at. So these are 9 men, right, that have bathed the wall in blood, and yet for some reason we are supposed to feel that the Catholic Church or the church in general is responsible. This is absolutely not true. Statistically, no. If we need to ban anything, we need to ban science, right? Because science, as I recall, created explosives. Science created bullets. Science created guns. Science created factories that create bullets and guns. Science built tanks. Science built planes that deliver bombs, right, and deliver guns. So yeah, if we do need to ban anything, we do need to ban science. That would help. So yeah. So guys, let's end off here. So the Encyclopedia of Wars places wars in, but science also created the internet, which enabled YouTube. And Hitler was also a vegetarian who loved dogs. So how can you know What's not to like about him? No, I understand. Look, I mean, I get the point. Look, I'm also being a little sarcastic. I'm being a little bit facetious. I understand. But science created the internet, but science also created pollution, right? Science created the internet, but science also bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Science also created any number of like all those oil spills. That wasn't the Catholic Church, unless the, Exxon Valdez incident is caused by the Catholic Church, which it's not, just so by the way. And I'm being very sarcastic here. Okay. Yeah, ban abortion. Good idea. Unfortunately, that's a sacrament to the left, right? Um, yeah, so hold on. There might be a couple of questions I missed. Guys, if you can just like this, if it's useful to you, if it's educational. So have I missed anything? Yeshua is Yahweh. This is exactly the stats I need. Please, when you get a chance, post these sources. So yeah, all of this is actually in the notes. I've just added these two, this graph here specifically, and this graph, I only created this one. I created today. Um, but without these, the notes are in the description, right? It's my OneNote database. So you'll see the OneDrive link. Click on that. Opens in a browser, you'll find this. Science probably created Islam. Daughter of Al-Masi, you're probably right. We're in a test tube. It's an abortion from a test tube. Good grief. Right. So, guys, to end off, now, these books from these two guys places war in their historical context. Okay, it is the first reference work of its kind. Right, it describes not only the military aspects of wars, the causes of conflict, an enumeration of battles, and a summary of the outcomes, but also the social and political context in which the wars occurred. Right, so readers and researchers are provided with important facts as well as historical background from the Crusades to the Revolutionary War to the Persian Gulf War. It's 3 volumes, covers every major war, rebellion, and revolution from 3500 BC to the present, right? And it has approximately 2,000 entries in the index, right? So it's a definitive resource. It is thorough. It is detailed, right? There are suggestions for further reading following each entry, and a general bibliography of major texts on war is in the final volume. There are cross-references, there are 60 maps, and a chronology that make this thing very useful. Just so you know, science does say that Muhammad split the moon in half. Yes, Josie Wells, you're correct. Yeah, in fact, there's a Sira volume called "When the Moon Split." It's probably the third most popular volume. So the most popular Sira volume is probably the Ash Shifa, like Ash, Ash Shifa by Qadi Iyad, and the second one is called the Sealed Nectar. Right. So that's those two, and then of course the third one being When the Moon Split. These are probably the most common of the modern series, although the Ashifa goes way back. So yeah, and yeah. So let's see. Christian sect plus Talmud created Islam. Yes, Veronica, that actually is probably more true than you realize. If you read through the Sharia text, you'll find that in the Islamic sources, they actually within the Sharia, there are terms which are Arabized, but when you translate them, you actually find that they have words like Marcionism. One of the anonymous, wow, thank you very much. I appreciate that too. Thank you. So, for instance, Marcionism is one of the early heresies in the Christian church, right? So, the 4th century. And daughter of Al-Masi, this is why there's so much science in the Quran, because science destroys everything. Now, Gospel Age, thank you very, very much. Thank you. I'm really grateful. Appreciate it. So, Marcionism was one of the early heresies in the church, one of the earliest heresies the church had to deal with in the 4th century, if I believe. And in Islam, they actually reference it. They actually have a name for it. And then so there's Manichaeanism as well. They have an Islamic name for it. I can't remember offhand what it is, but they reference these, and clearly these are part of Islamic ideas. These are all Christian, Gnostic, heretical sects. And they've taken these ideas, and of course they've taken heretical Jewish sects as well, like the Karaites. They've definitely taken from that. And of course, I can do in fact, I should do a show. I can show you exactly how Islam has copied, plagiarized the Talmud. So, Veronica, you're more correct than you realize. They've plagiarized the Talmud, and I can show you exactly how, even down to some of the words. But yes, I can show you exactly the correlation 1-to-1, Talmud to Quran, sorry, to Islam's Sharia. The Sharia is the Islamic Talmud. The Sharia is effectively the Islamic Talmud. And of course, they had the major seminary where the Sharia was created, right, in Baghdad, was just literally down the street from the major Jewish seminary. And of course, they then took all their work and then they murdered all the Jewish scholars. That's how Islam works. So Charles Phillips is the author or co-author of. That's a fairly good thought. daughter of Al-Masih, that yes, it's very probably Islam's a Christian heresy. However, it's not just a Christian heresy. It's definitely drawn from Jewish ideas. The Talmud definitely is an inspiration for the Sharia. It's definitely, they've copied it, they've plagiarized the Talmud. They've also taken from obviously Gnostic, Christian Gnostic sects, but also they've clearly taken from things like Manichaeanism. They've taken from strange ideas from Hinduism and various others. Yeah, I really did that. I know it's just I've probably done lots of things in various episodes. I mean, yeah. So anyway, Charles Phillips is the author, co-author of numerous works on history, okay, including Portraits of Civil War, What Every American Should Know About American History, and Facts on Files, Encyclopedia of Historical Treaties and Alliances. Alan Axelrod is the author or co-author of numerous books, including Encyclopedia of the American West, Pattern on Leadership, and Facts and Files, Dictators and Tyrants, and Encyclopedia of Historical Treaties and Alliances. So respected authors. All right. Yeah, guys, so this is where I should end. It's gone a little longer than I expected, a bit more of a monologue than I anticipated. But I want to say thank you for the support. Thank you for the time. I enjoy speaking with you guys. I will be doing another show on Friday. And on Friday, I will be talking about the whole concept of why Muslims feel that they are the best because they are told they are the best of humans and we are the worst of beasts. We are the lowest of creatures and why we deserve to be subjugated by them. Arianism, yes, Arius. So the whole concept, the whole problem with Arius in the 4th century, this was the greatest heresy that the early Christian church faced, right? So the name Muhammad is really the title for Jesus, the praised one. Yes, it's a title, correct? That is very, very true. But don't forget, in Islam, Muhammad is the praised one. And in fact, if you look at there is, if I go through the idea of the Sirah, you've got there's a prophecy in the Old Testament about the King Messiah, right? And Muhammad is made to be the King Messiah. So, in other words, all of God's power at the end times is transferred to the King Messiah. So, Muhammad is the King Messiah. He is the Islamic Jesus. He is the counterfeit Jesus. And this you find from reading the Sirah. And of course, there's like dozens of these Sirah novels. Now, so yeah, so I will be talking about the whole implications and what it means and just all of the theological issues around Muslims being the best of creatures and everyone else being the worst of beasts. That's something that I will be covering on my channel. Actually, let me just go to the content and just bring up this page. So expect that on Friday. I will probably do that. So the plan was to do this. Nope, wrong one. Oh, here we go. Um, so let me bring this up. Yeah, so this is on Friday. So the Islamic Ummah, the best of people, and the worst of creatures, which is us, the evil unbelievers. Yeah. So let me just go back to that. Yeah. So this is what I will be discussing on Friday. I think I've set it for 8:30. I might make it 8. So guys, that's it from me. I think I'm done, but I look forward to seeing you guys on Friday. I'm doing some research and I hope to be so me and this and Stephen will be chatting soon and we hope to be providing some interesting information. So look out for an announcement on that. And hold on, let's have a look. I was told Arabic grammar is, for example, the last mention should be praised, and in Shahada is Muhammad the last. I think so, but the thing is, the full Shahada is not in the Quran. That's a later addition by the scholars. That the full Shahada involving Muhammad is not in the Quran, right? So yeah, guys, hasta la pasta. Right, I hope this was helpful. Hope this was interesting, and thank you guys for the support. I'm really grateful, and yeah, and so guys, that's it for me. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment. All the links, I'll update the files later, in a few minutes with the new graphs. But everything that I've discussed, all the books, all the references, everything is in the description. So try that. And if you see Yahya, give him my best. Okay. Yeah. Tell him tell him I wish him all the best, because man, that guy needs it. Okay. And thanks, guys. So that's it from me. I'm going to call it a night, and we shall see you on Friday. Thank you very much. Bye.